Some of the more fascinating pieces of evidence in South America have come out recently about these channels and pathways that they've found in the Amazon that could not have been created any other way but by humans creating irrigation, humans creating grids, like a city grid.
We are taught that the Amazon was sparsely populated by hunter-gatherers until recently, but that timeline just broke. A new expedition followed a trail of magnetic anomalies deep into the jungle and found a sealed chamber. Inside, they didn't find simple tools. They found the ribs of extinct Ice Age monsters arranged like a cathedral. The carbon dating on the site is impossible according to standard history books. Basically, whoever built this place had advanced engineering skills thousands of years before they were supposed to exist. And they left a message that changes the entire story of human history. The invisible city revealed. The Amazon is roughly the size of the entire continental United States. Yet despite all our satellites and modern tech, we have mapped less of the Amazon floor than we have of the surface of the moon. It is the last great blind spot on Earth. For over a century, explorers vanished trying to find lost cities here. The jungle grows so fast that it can swallow a stone temple in just a few years. But here is the deal. We do not need machetes to find ruins anymore. We have something called Lidar. Think of Lidar as a sonar for light. A plane flies over the trees and shoots billions of laser pulses at the ground. Most hit the leaves, but a few penetrate through the gaps and bounce off the dirt. A computer removes the trees from the data, and suddenly you can see the ground as if the forest wasn't there. In 2019, Ella Al-Shamahi led a survey over a remote border zone between Brazil and Colombia. This area was supposed to be empty wilderness. But when the data came back, the lab went silent. The screen didn't show random hills. It showed lines, perfectly straight lines running for miles. Nature does not make straight lines. The scan revealed roads, raised platforms, and square plazas. It looked like a master-planned city grid hidden under the vines. But the craziest detail was at the center of the map. Right at the base of a limestone ridge, the laser data showed a perfect oval shape. It wasn't a sinkhole. The rock density was different from everything around it. It looked like a massive door that had been fused shut. Dr. Ella realized this wasn't just a settlement. It was a fortress. The sheer scale was mind-blowing. The mapped area covered 30 square miles. To support a city that big, you need massive agriculture, trade, and engineering. According to the mainstream timeline, people in the Amazon back then were supposed to be small nomadic tribes. This scan proved they were wrong, but it gets weirder. The LiDAR showed that the door into the ridge wasn't covered by soil. It was exposed rock, but it had a chemical signature that suggested it had been heated to extreme temperatures. It was like someone, or something, had melted the rock to seal it. The team knew they couldn't just stare at the screen. They had to go there. But the jungle fights back. The location was hundreds of miles from the nearest road, in a zone known for violent storms and difficult terrain. Dr. Ella organized an expedition, believing she was going to find a lost city. She had no idea that the city was just the appetizer. The real secret was waiting inside that ridge, and getting there would require walking through a landscape that defied time itself. The journey to the ridge revealed the first impossible clue. Walking with extinct beasts. The team hacks their way to the site. It takes weeks. When they finally reach the base of the ridge, they don't find the door immediately. They find something else. They start clearing the moss off the cliff face, and suddenly, one of the assistants yells out. The rock isn't gray. It is red. They had found a mural. But this wasn't just a few handprints. This was the Sistine Chapel of the ancients. The painting stretched for nearly 100 feet across the cliff. And the details were terrifyingly accurate. Here is where things become stranger. The paintings didn't show jaguars or monkeys. They showed animals that have been extinct for 12,000 years. There were drawings of mastodons, relatives of the elephant that vanished at the end of the Ice Age. There were giant sloths. Now, when I say giant sloth, don't think of the cute little guys in the trees today. These things were the size of a minivan and stood 12 feet tall on their hind legs. They had claws as long as a human forearm. The fact that these animals were painted on the wall meant one thing. The artists saw them alive. This dated the site to at least 12,600 years ago. That is thousands of years older than any sophisticated civilization is supposed to be in this region. But it wasn't just a nature documentary painted on stone. The pigment analysis dropped a bombshell. The red ochre used for the paint didn't come from the local soil. The chemical signature matched mineral deposits found over 400 miles away. Think about that. 12,000 years ago, these people weren't just surviving. They were traveling, trading, and transporting specific artistic materials across half a continent. That requires a level of organization that rivals ancient Egypt, but it happened in the middle of the wild Amazon. Dr. Ella noticed something disturbing about the mural, though. The animals weren't just standing there. They were running. All the figures were depicted in a state of panic, fleeing from a specific direction. And right in the middle of the chaos, there was a human figure standing under a strange symbol. It looked like a circle with jagged lines coming off it, a ring of fire in the sky. Next to the figure, there were dots arranged in a specific pattern. An astronomer on the team realized it wasn't decoration. It was a star map. But the stars weren't in the positions we see today. They matched the night sky exactly as it looked 10,800 years before Common Era. This was the end of the Younger Dryas period, a time when the Earth went through a sudden, violent climate shift. The temperature dropped, then spiked. Ice caps melted. Oceans rose. The mural was a record of that disaster. The people who built this weren't just drawing. They were leaving a warning. They were telling us that the world ended once before, and the path led straight to the sealed oval door the Lidar had spotted. The team followed the base of the cliff until they found it. The door was a section of rock that was smoother than the rest, covered in a pale mineral glaze known as calcite. It looked like flowstone, but harder. And here is the kicker. When they got close to the seal, their electronics started glitching. The compass needles started spinning, pointing towards the sealed door. Opening the time capsule. Compass needles spinning wildly usually means one thing: a massive amount of magnetic material or metals nearby. But this was a limestone ridge. Limestone is not magnetic. The team set up scanners to find a weak point in the calcite wall. The vibration readings suggested the rock wasn't solid. There was a hollow space behind it, a massive one. Dr. Ella gave the order to drill. They used diamond-tipped bits, expecting to punch through in an hour. It took 3 days. The mineral seal was incredibly dense, reinforced with something that dulled the tools. Finally, the drill broke through. And then, something happened that gave everyone goosebumps. A hiss. Pressurized air rushed out of the hole. This happens sometimes in sealed tombs, but this air was different. It didn't smell like rot or decay. It smelled metallic, like ozone and wet iron. It was the smell of a thunderstorm trapped in a bottle for millennia. They widened the hole enough to squeeze through. Dr. Ella went first. She dropped into the darkness, her headlamp cutting through the dust. The first thing she noticed was the floor. It wasn't rough cave floor, it was paved. Inside a sealed cave from the Ice Age, there was a smooth, leveled floor. But it gets even more insane. The floor was made of a black, carbon-rich soil. This is what experts call Terra Preta. It is a man-made supersoil found in the Amazon. It is engineered to be hyper-fertile and never depletes. We still don't fully understand how they made it so perfect. Finding it inside the cave meant this wasn't a natural formation. It was an engineered bunker. As the rest of the team dropped in, they realized the scale of the place. The ceiling arched 30 feet above them. The walls were reinforced with pillars of basalt, a hard volcanic rock that had to be hauled from miles away. This was an architectural masterpiece. It was built to hold back the weight of the mountain. They walked deeper, following the paved path. The air was heavy. The silence was absolute. There were no bats, no insects, just the sound of their boots on the ancient soil. Then, the path opened up into a central chamber, and what they saw there made the Lidar discovery look boring. Lining the walls were bones, but they weren't piled up like a graveyard. They were arranged. Massive curved ribs, each one over 6 feet long, were set into the floor in perfect arcs, creating a sort of rib cage tunnel. These were the ribs of the mastodons they saw on the mural outside. The builders had used the bones of these giants to create a structure inside the cave. It looked like a temple or a sanctuary. The sheer effort to drag these multi-ton bones into the cave and set them up is mind-boggling. But why? Why build a bone cathedral inside a sealed mountain? Dr. Ella moved to the center of the room. There was a circular depression there, a pool. It was filled with a black liquid that was perfectly still. It looked like a black mirror. When she shined her light on it, the reflection didn't look right. The liquid was thick, viscous. The liquid in the pool wasn't water. It was something else entirely. The echo of the impact. The team approached the black pool cautiously. In the Amazon, standing water usually means parasites and disease, but this liquid was sterile. They took a sample. It wasn't oil, and it wasn't muddy water. The field test revealed it was water heavily saturated with metallic isotopes and charcoal. It was almost like a liquid preservation agent. And it worked. Floating in the dense black liquid were seeds. Not fossilized seeds, preserved organic material. The botanist on the team nearly fainted. These were seeds from plants that went extinct over 10,000 years ago. There were species of palms and medicinal plants that do not exist in the modern Amazon. This changes everything. The cave wasn't a tomb for people. It was an ark. The builders saw the disaster coming, the fire in the sky from the mural. They knew the plants outside were going to die. So, they built a bunker, created a sterile environment using the black liquid and Terra Preta, and stored the seeds of their world to replant it later. But they never got the chance. The team found jars sealed with wax along the walls. Inside, they found more seeds, dried tubers, and DNA samples of the era's crops. This was a Doomsday vault, exactly like the one we have in Norway today, but built 12,000 years ago. This proves that these ancient people understood biology, preservation, and long-term planning on a level we never gave them credit for. They weren't just surviving day to day, they were thinking about the future of their civilization centuries down the line. But there was one final mystery in the cave. The back wall. It was covered in a thick layer of soot. Not from a campfire, but from a high-intensity blast. Embedded in the soot were microscopic glass beads called microspherules. These tiny glass beads only form when rock is melted by a cosmic impact or a nuclear explosion. Dr. Ella realized the truth. The Younger Dryas impact theory suggests a comet fragment hit the Earth around 12,800 years ago, causing massive fires and a sudden freeze. The microspherules in the wall proved the theory was real. The shockwave from the impact must have reached this far. The heat was so intense it melted the rock outside, sealing the cave shut. The people who built this vault didn't vanish mysteriously. They were trapped. Or perhaps, they sealed it from the inside to protect the contents, hoping someone in the future would find it. The bone structure, the star map, the seed bank. It was all a message. They were trying to save the building blocks of their world. The magnetic anomaly the team sensed outside was coming from the basalt pillars. They were highly magnetized, likely due to the intense electrical storms that occurred during a cosmic impact event. Everything in the cave was a physical record of the day the world almost ended. The most chilling part was what they found next to the pool. Near the edge of that mysterious black pool, the team stumbled upon something that shouldn't have been there. It was a set of tools. They were sleek, sharp, and black. They were made of obsidian, volcanic glass. Here is the problem. There is no obsidian in the Amazon. The geology doesn't support it. To find volcanic glass like this, you have to travel to the Andes Mountains. That is a journey of thousands of miles, across some of the most punishing terrain on Earth. Finding obsidian here is like finding a polar bear in the Sahara. It just doesn't fit. This confirmed something massive. It proved that a trade network existed, one that spanned the entire continent. We aren't talking about a few guys walking a trail. We are talking about a superhighway of commerce that moved heavy, raw materials across impossible distances. But how did they move it? This brings us to our first wild theory. Some fringe researchers look at the size of these obsidian blocks and the lack of wheel tracks, and they suggest something radical. They talk about acoustic levitation. There are legends all over the Andes about priests who could use sound, specific frequencies from trumpets or chanting, to make heavy rocks light. We know sound waves can levitate small droplets of water in a lab today. Did these ancient people figure out how to scale that tech up? Did they hum these tools across the mountains? It sounds crazy, but looking at the pristine condition of the tools, you have to wonder. But the tools themselves weren't the scariest part. It was how they were found. They were laid out neatly, perfectly parallel. A chisel here, a hammerstone there. It looked exactly like a workshop where the worker had just stepped away for a lunch break. You expected them to walk back in at any moment, but nobody walked back in. There were no bodies in the cave. We scanned the floor. We checked the corners. We looked for burial pits. Nothing. This is the part that keeps experts up at night. If this cave was a bunker designed to survive an apocalypse, where are the people? If they died here, where are the bones? If they left, why did they leave their most valuable tools behind, laid out so carefully? Dr. Ella has a theory, but it's a heavy one. She believes the cave wasn't for them. It was for us. But there are others who go further. They look at the lack of bodies and the electromagnetic anomalies in the walls, and they propose the phase shift theory. What if they didn't die? What if they didn't leave on foot? Quantum physicists tell us there are other dimensions right on top of ours. Some theorists believe this high-tech culture discovered a way to vibrate their physical bodies at a higher frequency. When the cataclysm came, when the sky turned fire and the floods hit, they didn't run. They simply shifted. They stepped sideways into a parallel reality, leaving their physical tools behind because they no longer needed matter. It sounds like science fiction, but we have legends of star people, or sky gods, vanishing in a flash of light in almost every ancient culture. Maybe they didn't go to the stars. Maybe they are still here, just invisible to our eyes. Let's come back down to Earth for a moment, or at least to the geology. Dr. Ella believes they knew they couldn't survive the cataclysm that was coming physically. The climate was changing too fast. The Younger Dryas impact event was cooling the planet overnight. The megafauna, their main food source, was dying out in mass extinctions. They saw the writing on the wall. They knew their time was up. So they dedicated their final efforts to one goal: preserving the source code of their civilization. They sealed the cave. They placed the seeds and the DNA records of the animals safely inside the earth. They protected it with the magnetic rock to deflect radiation, and the chemical pool to stabilize the temperature. Then, they sealed the door. What happened to them next is a mystery. Maybe they walked out into the freezing cold and perished. Maybe they went into the inner earth. This is another wild theory gaining traction. Many indigenous tribes in the Amazon speak of the ant people, or the inside ones, who live in vast cavern systems deep underground. Did this civilization retreat deeper into the crust, using the geothermal energy to survive the ice age on the surface? If Lidar is right, and there are tunnels connecting these sites for hundreds of miles, it's possible they didn't build a bunker. They built a door to a subterranean world we haven't even mapped yet. Whatever happened to them, this discovery forces us to rewrite the textbooks. We have to tear out the first chapter of human history and start over. We used to think civilization began in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, around 6,000 years ago. We were told that before that, we were just hunter-gatherers hitting rocks together. But this site in the Amazon proves that highly complex societies existed thousands of years before Sumer or Babylon. They had geology. They understood chemistry well enough to create that preservation pool. They had agriculture that makes ours look primitive. And they had astronomy that could predict cosmic cycles. They faced a threat that we are still vulnerable to today: a sudden, violent shift in the planet's climate. This brings up the mother culture theory. For years, people have whispered about Atlantis, not as a magical underwater city with mermaids, but as a real global maritime civilization that existed during the Ice Age. Could the Amazon be a colony of that lost empire? The symbols on the obsidian tools match symbols found in Turkey at Göbekli Tepe. They match symbols found in Indonesia. How is that possible unless there was a global culture that was connected by ships or flight? Yes, flight. Among the artifacts, there are small golden trinkets that look suspiciously like airplanes. Aerodynamic wings, vertical stabilizers. Archaeologists call them zoomorphic insects, but put one in a wind tunnel and it generates lift. If these people had flight, then the lost city wasn't just a city of gold. It was a hub of a global network. It was a city of knowledge. The real treasure wasn't jewels. It was the proof that humanity has risen and fallen more times than we know. So, do you think there are more Doomsday vaults hidden in the Amazon? Or was this a one-time fluke of history? It makes you wonder how much we truly know about our past. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the unknown, smash that like button and subscribe. You do not want to miss what we uncover next. Thanks for watching.